Right, so after all of the talk, hearing that this fight was nearly done for a late summer showdown at Wembley Stadium, it is now looking like Tyson Fury against Anthony Joshua may well not be the next fight, at least for Anthony Joshua, and speculation is now growing around who his next opponent will be. Anthony Joshua is just coming back from minor surgery. Tyson Fury is retired. Apparently, I mean, let's say I was a retired builder, for example, I might put up the odd shelf around the house, but I'm probably not going to be going down to the building site and knocking my bollocks out 5 or 6 days a week just purely for the fun of it. But each to their own. And you can't help people for feeling like the Fury against Joshua fight was going to happen after all of the footage that we have seen of Tyson Fury training in the gym, sparring even, but now that is actually starting to look a lot less likely, at least for the next fight, because in my opinion, I think that Tyson Fury could be in the gym ticking over, maybe even getting ready and awaiting the outcome of the Usyk against Dubois undisputed fight, because if Alexander Usyk was to win that fight over Daniel Dubois, I genuinely do think that Tyson Fury could walk in to an Usyk trilogy without a tune-up or without even beating a legitimate contender. And now this is where people get annoyed with me, because it's like I'm saying that I think he deserves to walk into an Usyk fight, and that's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying at all. So before the purists get on to me, please understand, I don't mean that he deserves it, but what I'm saying is, in boxing and in real life, money talks, and ultimately there is no bigger money fight for Alexander Usyk if he was to beat Daniel Dubois than a Tyson Fury trilogy. Caballero, Parker, one of the up-and-comers, I'm telling you, financially it doesn't even come close. And if you're Usyk, you're going to be bang up for it, aren't you? Because Usyk has fought Tyson Fury twice now, and despite both of those being relatively close and definitely competitive fights, with a 40-odd pound weight disadvantage, Alexander Usyk has still found a way to beat Tyson Fury, and in one of those fights to hurt Tyson Fury quite badly. So he will be extremely confident that he would be able to do it a third time. But where does that then leave Anthony Joshua? Well, this week we have heard a lot of reports that Anthony Joshua has been negotiating a 2-fight deal with His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh, and the first of those fights being against Dillian Whyte, his old rival. The second of those fights being against Jared Big Baby Anderson. So let's speak about those two fights first. Now, the Dillian Whyte fight would definitely be one that gets the British boxing public excited. On a world stage, I don't think it's a very big fight, but for the British fans, we would definitely love it. It would probably do Spurs. I don't think that Anthony Joshua against Dillian Whyte does Wembley. I think if you put a good undercard on it, it does Spurs now. And obviously it's a rivalry that dates back around, guessing about 15 years or so, since Dillian Whyte actually defeated Anthony Joshua in the amateurs. And around 10 years ago, Anthony Joshua got his revenge, this time in the pro ranks against Dillian Whyte in one of the best British heavyweight title fights that I can remember seeing in such a long time. Dillian rocked AJ in that one after having come through an early onslaught. He was competitive in the middle rounds, and then ultimately he succumbed to an onslaught once again from Anthony Joshua, being knocked out in the 7th round with a lethal right uppercut. And this fight's a weird one because both men are so different now to what they were back then. AJ was fearless back in 2015. Game as a badger. He had an air of invincibility around him. But since losing that first time to Andy Ruiz, AJ has never consistently boxed with that fearless nature that I believe we used to see from him fight in, fight out. He has had moments in fights where he's looked great and he's delivered in those moments. He hasn't looked gun shy in those moments, but moments are what they are, in my opinion. I just don't think that he's looked consistently spiteful and vicious throughout a fight since around the time of the Vladimir Klitschko and Andy Ruiz fights. And you got to applaud it the win since, especially the likes of Pulev or Ovalin, even Ngannou, because what that has showed us is that AJ's actually managed to adapt his style to be able to preserve more energy, not having to be as aggressive from the opening bell, but still being able to get that outcome. But when he stepped up against the higher level guys since then, he hasn't really had an answer for it. Now, as for Dillian Whyte, he's still just as game, he's still just as wild. He'll be heading into this fight, hopefully, you would imagine, uninjured, because he was fighting Anthony Joshua that first time round just a couple of weeks out from having shoulder surgery. So obviously the arm wasn't as good as it would be. And when we speak about the arm, one thing that Dillian Whyte has massively leveled up on during his career, and definitely since the Anthony Joshua fight, is his jab. I do think it's a very underrated punch of Dillian Whyte's. However, the chin that Dillian Whyte exhibited earlier on in his career has been chipped away at a lot since that Anthony Joshua fight, with multiple moments when he's been in crisis, multiple knockdowns, 3 times being knocked out if you include the Anthony Joshua fight, and always being knocked out by an uppercut, and that is a shot that Anthony Joshua loves to throw. However, Whyte is going to be spurred on by AJ's last performance against Daniel Dubois, where obviously things went horribly wrong for him. He's then had a long time out the ring. He's had minor surgery in that time. So because of that, I do think that this fight has the ingredients to be a close and competitive fight. I mean, thinking about it, really, let's just be completely honest. It's about whose chin goes first in this one, isn't it? Because, as I say, Dillian Whyte will probably be more aggressive, he'll probably be more wild, and he'll probably be more game in the opening stages, but Anthony Joshua does have much better punch accuracy than Dillian Whyte, in my opinion, and therefore, if Whyte is wild, it only takes one, and we know that he can be caught when he's trying to land on the man himself. As can AJ. It happened with the first knockdown against Andy Ruiz, and it happened with the knockout against Daniel Dubois. However, Dillian Whyte was actually supposed to be fighting on the undercard of Fabio Wardley against Justice Hooney, and on fight week, he's pulled out. Frank Warren was asked about why he pulled out, and he said that Dillian Whyte has accepted a mega fight for August, which they hope to announce shortly. So if that is the case, knowing that AJ has just had minor surgery, he probably won't be back until late September, it leads me to believe that Dillian Whyte isn't going to be the man that Anthony Joshua is facing. I think that Dillian Whyte has maybe accepted a fight against the likes of most likely Derek Chisora, possibly even Lawrence Okoli, and I'll be buzzing to see both of those fights, to be fair. Which means that Anthony Joshua could focus his attentions to the second opponent that was rumoured, which is Jared Big Baby Anderson, and I actually find this fight fascinating because athletically, neither man is better than the other, in my opinion. AJ has attributes like power and accuracy that probably exceed Jared Anderson's, but Jared Anderson has attributes like movement and fluidity that exceeds Anthony Joshua's. But overall, when you factor everything in, it's a very even fight for me. The thing that may swing it towards Anthony Joshua is obviously the amount of top level experience. Barring, I would say, Derek Chisora, and obviously most of the top-level experience that Chisora has come in the form of losses, I would say that Anthony Joshua is the most experienced out of any active heavyweight boxer right now when it comes to top guys fought. But my main reason why I like the Anderson fight for Anthony Joshua is because as gifted and as technical and as talented that Jared Anderson obviously is, I just think he's mentally weak. And that's a big statement, being that he got up multiple times against Martin Bakole when he could have quit. But I don't necessarily mean in the ring he's as mentally weak. I more so think that when he can't get his rhythm in a fight, that's when things start to unravel for him. We saw it against Martin Bakole, even though he did fight back at times, and we even saw it against former Anthony Joshua opponent Charles Martin. And he stated in the past that he wants to be retired from boxing by the age of 27, which immediately rings alarm bells for me. Most of you would have seen the clip of himself and Roy Jones Jr. when Jared Anderson breaks down and he speaks about the pressure, and that leads me to believe that he is a bit mentally weak for the game of boxing. Now, in life, absolutely nothing wrong with that at all, and I think it's a good thing. It's admirable that he finds the courage to be able to be vulnerable with Roy Jones Jr. in that situation. But in boxing, that ain't where you want to be. And like it or not, rate him or not, AJ is mentally strong. He's consistently taken the toughest challenges available to him, and he does live the life. But then Jared Anderson's a good talent, and boxing history has taught us to not write off young heavyweights just because they take a stoppage loss. Believe me, most of the best did, and most of the best ended up coming back from it. So Jared Anderson could definitely cause a lot of problems to Anthony Joshua. I mean, Jermaine Franklin caused a lot of problems to Anthony Joshua. Of course Jared Anderson could, but I honestly really do feel like for Anthony Joshua, this is a good fight. In fact, I would say it's a better fight than the one I'm about to speak about, and that is a fight that we have heard for years and years. It's been in the media this week, and that is the fight between Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder. Now listen, if it's on the TV, I'm gonna watch it, of course. But I personally am not as excited about this one as I would be even about Anthony Joshua against Jared Anderson, for example. I just think that, although many of you might call me a hypocrite here because I have campaigned for the Anthony Joshua against Tyson Fury fight, and I've kind of said, you know, better late than never. Fuck me, man. The circumstances are very, very different. Deontay Wilder just looks like a shell of his former self. He's lost 4 out of his last 5 fights, and he's lost them in almost embarrassing fashion sometimes. I saw Wilder up close and personal in Saudi Arabia, and I was actually shocked, honestly. Like, he just doesn't have that same sort of energy that he used to have. And obviously I'd never seen him in person in the past when he was WBC champion, so maybe I would have felt the same back then. But yeah, I was surprised by the lack of energy that I felt that he had. I was also surprised at how old he was starting to look, and in the ring against Zhilei Zhang, again, he just looked very, very tentative, as he did against Joseph Parker. And a tentative styled fighter does not do well against Anthony Joshua. I mean, look at Joseph Parker when they fought back in the day. Obviously, Joseph Parker's come on leaps and bounds. He's made massive improvements, but there's a reason why that version of Joseph Parker gets beat by Anthony Joshua pretty comfortably, and why now if Joseph Parker was to fight Anthony Joshua, I'll be backing Joseph Parker to beat Anthony Joshua pretty comfortably. Because if you throw caution to the wind, take risks, back your chin and have power, then you have a very good chance of beating Anthony Joshua. You've also got a good chance of getting chinned on the way in, but you can't go swimming without getting wet. But if I had to rate my excitement of all of the fights that we've spoke about here, and we rule out the Tyson Fury fight, because as you all know, Tyson Fury's retired, I would probably read from most excited to least excited in this order. Most excited for AJ against Joseph Parker 2, then AJ against Anderson, then AJ against Dillian Whyte, and then least excited for AJ against Deontay Wilder. But I have got some good news for you guys, because there is a fight that I am about to speak of that is being reported today that I'm more excited for than all of the above, barring the Tyson Fury fight, because, as I say, he's retired. And that fight is Anthony Joshua against Jarrell Big Baby Miller. These two have history. In fact, they fucking hate each other. There was a notorious incident that happened while filming an episode of The Gloves Are Off when these two got into a physical altercation. This was obviously in the build-up for their fight. Jarrell popped for every substance under the sun. Fight got cancelled. Andy Ruiz came in to replace him, and the rest is history. For me personally, I'd just say take my money and make the fight, because do you know what it is, right? AJ's not the most exciting character in the pressers, in the build-ups to fights, but it usually is dependent upon his dance partner, because certain fighters can bring that aggression out of him. But just quickly, I want to take 1 minute to tell you guys about new partner of the channel, Nyla Apparel. I was lucky enough to be sent some clothes by these lot around a month ago, and I've got to be honest with you, since receiving them, they have become my go-to for both t-shirts and now for tracksuits. Now, I would not vouch for something unless I truly believed in the product, and anyone that's seen me out and about around town will know that I am wearing the Nyla t-shirts all of the time. The first thing I noticed about them was how good the quality was, and then when speaking to the guys at Nyla, I found out that the money spent on material in comparison to what the actual t-shirts are sold for is probably about 10 times less than you would usually sell a t-shirt for that cost at. Basically, I'm of the opinion that they're spending about the same on materials as you do most t-shirts in flannels, but instead of paying 200 to 300 quid, you're paying about 10 times less than that. Instead, you're looking at £32 for the t-shirts, including free shipping, and just over £100 for the tracksuits. No shade thrown here, but the other day I had my eyes on a Nike tracksuit in JD Sports. I got it, I went to the checkout, and I was nearly at the point of having a heart attack when I found out that tracksuits, I always assumed, back in the day, growing up, were 100 quid. They're now costing over 200 quid, and these ones are exactly the same quality. So if you want a great fit at a great price for clothing that suits all occasions, hit the link in the description and browse the Nyla website. Thanks again to Nyla Apparel for their support with the channel. Let's get back into the video. And Jarrell Big Baby Miller is definitely a fighter that would be able to do that. And in the ring, I actually think you're looking at a very, very close and competitive fight between Joshua and Miller. Miller's come back from the ban and looked good, in my opinion. He smashed up a washed up Lucas Brown. Then he gets stopped on his feet by Daniel Dubois at the start of Daniel Dubois' metaphoric rise that has now seen him go on to beat Anthony Joshua himself. However, when you compare the two performances, they were night and day, really. Listen, Daniel Dubois put in, at the time, a career best performance against Jarrell Miller, answered a lot of questions, got the job done, outboxed him for large periods, and stopped him in the last round. But Jarrell Big Baby Miller was competitive throughout. I would say that he hurt Daniel Dubois more times than Anthony Joshua hurt Daniel Dubois. And the most obvious thing is Jarrell Big Baby Miller, despite being stopped on his feet, never touched the canvas, which Anthony Joshua did against Dubois multiple times. Now, I always say in boxing, it's horses for courses, and I'll stand by that. There are multiple opponents of Jarrell Big Baby Miller's that Anthony Joshua would have dusted off in much better and quicker fashion. But then you've got to look at the Andy Ruiz fight. And listen, right? I was there for this fight, and Jarrell Miller won this fight. I give all the praise in the world to Andy Ruiz for continuing, battling through and fighting with a broken hand for 5 or 6 rounds or something like that. But Jarrell Big Baby Miller was robbed on the scorecards, in my opinion. And even if you don't think he was, a draw would show you that he did a lot better on his first chance of facing Andy Ruiz than Anthony Joshua did on his first chance of facing him. Now listen, I'm just putting those comparisons out there as a bit of food for thought. I'm not putting too much emphasis on them. I know that obviously AJ fought an active Andy Ruiz and Jarrell Miller didn't, but as I say, it's food for thought. Now, if Miller can take AJ's power, right, then I can see him breaking AJ down. I can see him walking AJ down, backing him up with a lot of volume and really testing that gas tank and engine of Anthony Joshua's. And in my opinion, that's what he would need to do. He would need to drain Anthony Joshua, because I don't think that Jarrell Miller has enough single punch power to really get Joshua in a lot of trouble. Not off a single shot anyway, like we've seen him dropped by with the likes of Vladimir Klitschko. But if AJ can get himself a big old ring like he did for the Andy Ruiz rematch, box on his toes in a bit more of an amateur style, then I definitely think he could outpoint Jarrell Big Baby Miller. And possibly, he might even walk him onto something. He might even hit him and hurt him. But I tell you what, if you want to make a statement, then realistically, you want to go out there and stop Jarrell Miller. Do a better job on Jarrell Miller than Daniel Dubois was able to do. And then, potentially, you may not have missed the boat for that Dubois rematch along the line somewhere. I think ultimately, to beat Jarrell Miller, you've got to do a bit of both, like Daniel Dubois did. A bit of boxing on your toes and a bit of standing and banging. Getting the man in front of you's respect. Because one thing with Jarrell Miller is he's not hard to hit. He's not hard to hit at all, but you need to walk into the line of fire. You need to back your powers of recovery. You need to back your chin, and you need to back the fact that you can hit this fella harder than he can hit you, and you can do more damage. And AJ's chin, nor powers of recovery, to be honest, are great. So it's a dangerous game to play. But at this point in Anthony Joshua's career, I think that every game he plays is a dangerous one, and he might as well just go for it. I actually think this one would be a complete 50-50, to be honest with you. So either way, I want to know what you guys think. Let me know what fight you want to see next for Anthony Joshua if it is not Tyson Fury. Are you still interested in that Deontay Wilder fight? I personally am not, but I understand that most of you might be. And obviously, there's the likes of Caballero that I didn't mention who's coming through the ranks, you know? There's other fighters that could potentially be thrown into the mix, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. If you are not already, please do subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in the next one.